Cool. Welcome everyone to this session for Gender Awareness Week. My name is Dr. Yolandi Kutzer. I'm a senior lecturer here at the School of Philosophy. I take great pleasure in introducing you to Dr. Louise Postma. She is a lecturer in curriculum studies at the education faculty of the NWU. She is interested in post-humanism and new materialism and finds a multidisciplinary approach, such as the combination of works of art and literature, that is, the reading of works from different genres through each other, of educational value. She currently teaches modules in curriculum studies, online learning, and social justice. Today she'll be talking to us about acting with the post-human body in the visual art of Christian Diedericks and the poetry of Andrew Macmillan. A short abstract of this talk. A background and introduction opened the discussion on multiple becomings by the querying of the multiple ways in which traditional thinking and behavior are experienced. Listeners can join the analysis and become participants by sharing their personal awareness and experience of how the artist and the poet present and depict their personal perspectives. Their views are the manifestation of traditional and oppressive thinking and behavior in multiple becomings of both artist and viewer. The theoretical introduction to the discussion is informed by post-humanist philosophy. Over to you.
Thank you. I've actually changed the title a bit, and I thought I'm really focusing on becoming. So I took out acting, and it's now actually replaced with becoming. And I also added an et al. Because I'm not only using Christian Diedericks and Andrew Macmillan's work, I'm also going to work interdisciplinary and also include sculptures and other drawings. Okay, now I have a very cute nephew who made me this collage, which I really appreciated because it's actually bringing everything together what I'm doing. So I will focus on these works of art. And then there's a quote from the poem of Andrew Macmillan, which I thought is like for me the center or the focus of his poem, about the physicality of the struggle between Jacob and the angel, tangling in the unpierced flesh of one another, grappling with the shifting question of each other's bodies until the morning breaks, which I think is so beautiful. But okay, so this is now the artistic introduction. Let me go now to the philosophy. I'm going to look at the following. I've really had a struggle to figure out the whole idea of space-time matter. But I'm going to discuss it as part of the diffractive process in posthumanism. I'm going to look at matter, spirituality, and creativity in Diedericks' work. And then I'm going to have a look at how it entangles with the poetry of Macmillan and the artworks of Anderson, Bonnat, and Bernini. So I'm adding these three guys to the concert. Okay, so what I'm going to do, these are the titles of the artworks. Diedericks' work is called Planetary Platitudes, and it's part of a series. This one is specifically number 4. And then the Jacob and the Angel theme, which is in the poem of Macmillan, the sculpture of Anderson, also the painting or the chalk drawing of Bonnat. And then there's actually a woman included also in the presentation, and that is Saint Teresa, just to have a gender balance here. Okay. Now I'm going to read from the slide because I actually find the whole concept of space-time mattering very, very complicated. But if you step back a bit and you think about it, it starts to make sense. But anyway, Karen Barat, she's actually the mother of posthumanism. Before it was Donna Haraway, but she was a physical scientist, or what do you call it? Not a physical scientist. She's into quantum theory. Okay, so she refers to space-time mattering, to the space-time mattering of the self or the post-human body. So if we refer to ourselves in post-human terms, we would say my space-time mattering, or myself. It can also be described as space-time mattering, which replaces the word self. Ourselves can then be replaced with our space-time mattering. The term is a unit, so this term, it's not 3 different words, it's actually a unit, which describes the continuous present and future becoming of matter in interaction with the past. So this term refers to our becoming, and it's not time-bound, it's actually continuous. The past is integrated in the present, is integrated in the future. Matter can also be referred to as the result of the interactions in the past as congealed agency. What had been becoming and is still in a continuous process of becoming. We as humans are matter, such as everything else, and we become when we are in relationship with the space-time mattering of other bodies. Okay, then the post-humanist body is different from the humanist body in the sense that it only becomes in an interrelationship with other bodies and is not functioning like the humanist body as an entity which is not related to others. Humanism is human-centered and supports a mind-body, mind-matter dichotomy, which post-humanism doesn't do. In post-humanism, this dichotomy is cancelled. In post-humanism, or the other word is in post-anthropocentrism, the interrelatedness of the human body with other bodies is emphasized. Both these bodies are in a constant process of becoming in their intra-relatedness. And you will see when you are going to these artworks how our space-time mattering interrelates with the works, the artworks. These other bodies, as I said, can also be described as space-time matterings and refers to everything the self relates to. Okay, what is diffraction? Now, diffraction is the methodology. It's used in post-humanist philosophy to describe the nature of the relatedness or entanglement we as humans have with other bodies. And I said it's like human bodies, animal bodies, anything, bodies of knowledge. Artworks is also a body. These other bodies can also refer to works of art and literature, can refer to scientific traditions, and so on. Now, Barad describes diffraction by using a metaphor of waves. So if you approach the work of an artwork, you are a wave. And the artwork is a wave, and these waves meet. And diffraction can be seen as the interference of waves. So it means that it explains the interference or the meeting of waves, explains the changing of the viewer, who becomes different during the viewing of the artwork, and how the artwork actually changes in the interrelationship with the viewer, because the viewer reinterprets the artwork. So there's an agency in the artwork as matter, and your agency, and these agencies meet. So I actually have a picture of waves. You can see here is a very neat interference of waves, and it's also not always like that. The picture on the right is more a tumultuous meeting of waves and a very violent meeting of waves, which actually can happen. Okay, the moment of viewing or the encounter with another artwork is described by Barad as an agential cut. It's the moment when these agencies meet and the agencies interact. And when you return to an artwork to view it again, then many agential cuts occur because the artwork has agency, you have agency, and that moment of viewing is a cut. And every time when you think about it, these agential cuts reoccur. So we are then in a continuous differential becoming in our relatedness or entanglement with the work of art. We are continuously becoming different. Because we have, after a while, we have a different position, and we look differently at an artwork. So what Karen Barad says, one of the key elements in a diffractive reading is the returning to the original work and its continuous reinterpretation. So returning as a mode of interacting with diffraction, or diffracting diffraction, is particularly apt since the temporality of returning is integral to the phenomenon of diffraction. So when you are reading a text, the process of diffraction is already there. Because the text has agency, you have agency, and the meeting, the encounter, is already a diffractive process. Okay. And then Barat says we, the body, we as space-time matterings, is a multiplicity. It's a superposition of beings, becomings, years and days, nows and thens. So we are very complicated. We have multiple positions. We are always in the process of becoming. And as you see that years and days, there's no linear perception of time. So, and also not of a boundary to space. Because artwork is a reconfiguring of an artist's opinion or his experience of his becoming and his space-time mattering. So, yes, okay, so this is what the self is. And that's the same with art and works of art and literature. They are reconfigurings of the world. How the artist is entangled with the world, reconfigures it into a certain artwork. It can also refer to a piece of music or a piece of writing or a painting or a sculpture. So, and when you are looking at it, there's also this process of entanglement and reconfiguring of your own world or your own space-time mattering. So it's an intra-reconfiguring process. This interference of the waves, this meeting of the waves, is actually is as much interactive as it's interactive, because you are changing, but in this interaction you are also changing. So that's an interactive process. Because in the end you can't distinguish the matter, the times, the space-time mattering, so it becomes interfered. Okay, so I've said time is not linear. With the encounter or viewing of an artwork, time becomes convoluted. Then becomes now, becomes tomorrow. And space does not have boundaries. The multiplicity of positions one brings to the encounter also changes, which implies a multiplicitous becoming different of space, of self or space-time mattering. So I wanted to explain this whole idea of space-time mattering because it puzzled me. So last night I thought, no, I must get it under the knee to understand what is matter. And there's also so many things about space, our relatedness to space, how we recreate space, how space interacts with us. So there's a whole movement or a whole philosophy on that also, but luckily I'm not getting into that. Okay, so the first principle I've given, hopefully the theoretical background, and here is the first work. It is, as I say, it's part of the series Planetary Platitudes, and it was made by Christian Diedericks in 2012. So here you can see, it's actually, as far as I'm concerned, really a very performative work. There's lots of movement in the triangular position and these two figures in front. So when I look at it, I really feel, well, this is a performance. I feel part of an audience. But the questions I have here is what, and we can catch questions on the edge. It's an aquatinted edge. What catches your eye when you look at the edge? And which impression does it make on you? Do you find it pleasing, disturbing, dramatic? So can you just share your ideas on the just general ideas? What are your feelings or emotions? What do you see? What do you think?
I thought it's very erotic. I like the image a lot. When I started looking at the first thing that caught my eye was the connection between the two bodies, and then I saw the wings afterwards, which I interpreted as angel wings, and then I thought of what that would be symbolic of, maybe some kind of statement or
Yeah.
comment on some spiritual aspects.
Yeah, spiritual awareness.
Yeah.
Yes, I like your answer. What Christy Dirks, now I know that one shouldn't really be bothered or shouldn't take it into account what the artist says or how the artist interprets it and why he made it. But I do take it into account because that's his positionality. So he says that the angel is his muse. And I actually have a quote in which he says, this part here, that I just want to hear this part here. He says, it is a compelling driving force behind me as an artist. The fierce masculine energy that sits over me like an angel, a wicked angel, forcing me to keep creating new work. So, so therefore, him in his creativity, he actually experiences a spirituality. So that he can't actually divorce the two. They are one and the same thing. What I actually find intriguing is the fact that the angel, that it's fierce and that it's energetic, but this almost a violent interaction. But here in the it seems very. It doesn't seem as if the bodies do meet, because the body of the angel is transparent. So there is this merging of bodies, which we will now see also in the sculptures of Jacob and the angel, and also in the poetry of Jacob and the angel. Just can I just give this on to Robert? Okay.
There's something interesting I'm thinking
Yes.
of as well. Sorry for jumping.
No, I wanted
There's
to.
a superpositioning, if one looks at the quantum physics side of it as well, with them kind of going through each other, which
Yeah.
is interesting.
Yeah, that's it. That's the transparency which does that.
Yes.
And Chris actually said that this was so difficult to achieve that in making this aquatin edge. He says it's the most difficult thing. And for him, this struggle, this physical struggle in making it and the concentration, for him it was like the struggle, he compared it to the struggle between Jacob and the angel. So that's also why I thought, let me choose some other works which express this struggle and the whole idea of spirituality. Yes.
But I think, the spirituality is also embodied in the apple, because it's this idea of like an original sin, like Adam and Eve eating from the forbidden fruit kind of thing. So there's almost a feeling that something wrong is happening here because there's this apple. It's like there's temptation, or there's something. So I don't know if that was what it's meant, but the apple definitely seems at least biblical.
Yeah.
And the fire, the burning bush kind of image.
True,
I actually, and our interpretations is as valid as the artist. Yes.
So just on the point of transgressive, that there's something transgressive in it. My first initial thought was that there's something really sexy in this. It's like a different type of masculinity that I think you used the word violent. There's a violence in it, but
it's a compelling energy.
But it's not just violent. It's also really soft, and it's
There's no. Well, he says it's a wicked angel. What does he say? Oh, I'm clicking on the wrong. A fierce masculine energy.
Yeah. But it doesn't feel traditionally masculine, or what we see, or what social culture would be described as masculine.
Yeah, because if you look at the angel, it's quite smooth, and there's no defined muscles here.
And it feels something very, soft and tender.
Especially in the face.
Yeah, it feels very sweet.
it feels not invasive.
Yeah.
And I think also it's the apple from the tree of knowledge. You've got the knowledge kind of feeding into that as well, but this is kind of forbidden knowledge in a sense.
What Chris said, and I was also thinking about the tree of knowledge and so on, the apple, and he says the apple stands for perfection. And as long as the apple is round and not bitten, it shows that he's striving for perfection. That was his. But our views are just as valid because that's how it is. All right. So, okay, then I'm asking the question, do you know how difficult it is to make an equitant edge on a copper plate? Because that's the matter with which he works. And it's apparently very, very difficult, and it's handling that process and well, for me it's that agency in the copper is not really controlled, and it really shows you how the angel in the end is such an interaction between the matter and the artist, because he can't predict, he can't really control it completely. But anyway, I'm getting now to the whole thing of matter. What is the posthumanist position on matter? Deleuze and Guattari says matter is in movement and flow can only be followed. So what happens with this copper is an agency which is not, it can't be contained, it can't be controlled. There's an agentic energy in matter. The following of the movement demands a respectful engagement with matter. And that's also the posthumanist position, is that how matter does matter. Any matter, is like a rock, if you make a sculpture, how that matter actually dictates and is agentic. The artist does not give form to matter. The matter is therefore not transformed by the artist. So it's not as if the artist is like the humanist artist who is absolutely in control. Well, yes, that is the humanist position. But the posthumanist position says no, there's much more agency in other things, in matter. Okay, so what actually then come to mind is what Michelangelo said about sculpturing. He says, the sculpture is already complete within the marble block. Before I start my work, it is already there. I just have to chisel away the superfluous material. I love this quote because it says how agentic the rock is to him. The material is there, the form is already there, it's already there. He just has to chisel away. And it's actually discovered. Okay, right, so what I say is the muse is in the matter. The angel is in the matter. Because he says the angel is his muse, it's his inspiration. How the copper becomes is not a one-sided transformation by the artist. The process where the matter or copper becomes an angel is an intra-agential process, as the copper and the artist both have agency. And then I have to quote that about how we experience the masculine energy and so on. And then he found this struggle, this making of the angel excruciating. It was tiring, it demanded so much concentration, but he also found it inspirational. Okay, okay, now I'm saying here, I've been trying to understand diffraction for some time. I think my process in writing an article and preparing for this presentation has been a process of reconfiguring, returning, experiencing, becoming different, all part of the process of diffraction. And then I say here, he compares the struggle he had in creating the angel with the struggle between Jacob and the angel. And then I found, at the same time, more or less, the poem by Macmillan on the same topic, Jacob and the angel. Okay, so here's I'm just going to read it, but you have it with you. Taken literally, it just happens the way the weather or stock market happens. Tangling in the unpierced flesh of one another, grappling with the shifting question of each other's bodies, until the morning breaks across them and still their strength. No soft part of stomachs, no inch of them hung loose, like old sucking from the muscle, and burning afterwards, or barely able to walk afterwards, or not giving a name because names would add a history, and the tasting of the flesh and blood of someone is something out of time. Taken allegorically, he's beating on himself until the point at which the inner river of the word grace turns past and everything lies down in calm. And walking back across the stream to his possessions, he feels the bruise that is staining his thigh, and he wonders at the strength of one so smooth. And his wives and women servants and his sons are waiting for the story, but he sleeps without speaking, and on waking isn't sure he has dreamed it. But his youngest notices the fresh marks of wing beats on his back, and he asks for ink to be brought. He says writing something down keeps it alive. Now for me, this poem is like the flagship of diffraction and post-humanism. If you look at what I'm going to do is to ask you first. But it does, it's built on the Genesis narrative of Jacob's wrestling with God. So this is the background. And a man is referenced, a man wrestled with him till daybreak. And then when the man saw he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of his hip, so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Okay, then there's the story of the blessing of Jacob. So Jacob was actually very strong, and the angel couldn't, or the angel, God, the idea it was a metaphysical figure that he actually overpowered him, and then he unwrenched his hip, touched the socket of his hip. Okay, so in the poem he says there's the stain on his hip, so it refers a bit to blood. Okay, how do you experience this poem? There's the recreation of the struggle between Jacob and the angel, because he says it's someone so smooth. So, and you relate, you say the angel in Diederik's edge is also smooth. So
yeah, the line that I noticed thinking back of what I said earlier was, and he wonders at the strength of one so smooth.
yes,
Seem contradictory, but
yeah, the strength of someone so smooth. So it's not muscular, it's a. And then there's this mixing of time, which I find so, and space. Because he says here, which takes it totally out of the time, the biblical narrative, is the way the weather or the stock market happens. So it's taken to the present. And then, so it goes into the physicality of the struggle, which makes it very tangible. And it brings you into the experience of what he had. It's not just like something which happens over there, far away. I know some artists present it as, the struggle between the two, and there's this nature scene, and there are the two very far away. But here you are really close up, and you're really witnessing the physicality of the struggle. And then there's this thing about time, because he doesn't want to add a name to the experience, because then it becomes history, and it sort of becomes dead. So he wants to keep that physical experience alive. And there's this whole thing about, was it a dream? Is it actually part of his imagination, this physical struggle? So it stands in a way against the physicality, the physical experience. Wasn't it actually a dream? So there's this in-between world in which the Jacob figure moves. So I want your comments on the poem. Do you have I just have some questions here. We've had some comparison between the poem and the edge, the smoothness of the figure and the strength.
It's interesting for me as well, these bodies, diffractively engaging but eternalized. I don't know if there's something to be said about that part of it. It's made eternal, this interrelation.
Eternal.
Eternal, yes. Because he says it's out of time, something
Yes.
out of time, which I find very interesting, because diffraction is very much in time, taking place and changing and dynamically shifting. So that's fascinating.
Yes, the concept of time, that he doesn't want to constrict it to a certain historical space.
Yes.
What can you say? Okay. For me, diffraction is also out of time. Because it's not time is not seen as linear, it's seen as continuous.
It's all these things together, of course.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. So, and here we have now a third portrayal of Bonnat, and he says, well, it's actually this is part of the French Academy, and because they had to make numerous drawings of nude male models. Also, like the Renaissance sculptures, also had to do that, like Michelangelo. So the work illustrates perfectly how integral the numerous live drawings of nude male models were to an artist's formation of fully realized narrative composition. So that is formally what is said about this, about the male body, the perfection, and so on. And in the Renaissance, okay, so from the Bonnat sketch, it seems as if the artist follows the tradition of the Académie Française of that time, such as the artists of the Renaissance did since the 1400s. So he made a sketch in the 1800s, so that tradition was still remaining for 200 years, 300 years. So it's a fundamental part of their training. And 34 years later, Bonnat, since Bonnat in 1911, so do I have my calculations right? Yes, 1876 to 1911. Then Hendrik Andersen followed the same tradition, and there is his sculpture. Okay, and following this tradition was important for the Renaissance artists for 300 years, who evoked the classical Greek ideals of the 5th and 4th century of male beauty, and they applied it to biblical narratives. So I think this is well known. But these works were met with disdain. The church authorities did not like it, and this one guy says, a papal official, it was most disgraceful that in so sacred a place there should have been depicted all those nude figures exposing themselves so shamefully that it was no work for a papal chapel but rather for the public baths and taverns. And then later on, a generation later, they painted loincloths over the sculptures. Okay, right, so and then I'm returning to the performativity of art. So if we look at this work of Jacob and the Angel, and we look at the work of Diderik's, it's really performative, and also the description of Macmillan, that it's a performance, and that performance awakes a certain emotion. It makes us very involved in the work. So I think that was the aspect of that art, this performative aspect of the art, which alarmed the clergy. It was so vivid, and it was so perfect, the bodies, that they were actually so shocked by it. So the performativity of an artwork interacts with the viewer, resulting in an agential co-performance between the viewer and the sculpture. And then Bolt describes the performativity of art as a painting as follows. The painting takes on a life of its own. It breathes, vibrates, pulsates, shimmers, and generally runs away from me. The painting no longer merely represents or illustrates reading. Instead, it performs. In the performativity of imaging, life gets into the image. So it's not only a representation, it's a performance. And the sculptures are also performative, as is the viewer. So the moment of viewing, that interference is as a co-performance or an intra-performance. Okay, so the effective value of art is in its performative nature. The critical post-humanist position on the value of art is whether it confronts, disturbs and queers traditional ideas, opinions, ways of thought and familiar experiences, or which possible other experiences are initiated and explored as the dominant experience or the narrative is not sustainable. Within its historic context, the homoerotic portrayal of Jacob and the angel caused a stir amongst clergy. And the Bernini, the next sculpture, was seen as improper during the Reformation. What do you make of the fact that the clergy were so appalled by naked figures and eroticism? Okay, I think eroticism is added by us. That's the way we would describe it. And I'm really sure it's still happening. Okay, but I don't want really to go to that question. Okay, do you find yourself involved in the same way the biblical figures perform in the poem of Macmillan as the works of the Renaissance artists? So does it have the same effect on you? Is the effect different?
For me, the poem, there's almost a distinct difference between the first part and the second part, in the sense that the first part, there are almost provocative words in each sentence or each line that is very descriptive. And I don't know if it's because I saw the artwork first that's kind of informing my interpretation of the poem, but I find that those words stand out a lot, and I get a lot more imagery when I read the first part. But the second part is almost this reflection, a little bit more. So it's less provocative than the.
But it's as if the figure returns and reconfigures his experience. So it's also in a diffractive sense busy, re-experiencing reinterpreting. And what will he now tell his family?
But I think that's noteworthy as well, that in the poem there's other agents as well. So like it talks about his son noticing the marks.
Yes.
And none of the other artworks, there's really a third or a fourth person.
Yes.
So it's quite interesting that here there's like a further dimension of interaction where that isn't with any of the other ones. So I thought that was also quite interesting, that it brings the family actually into it, because the family then almost affirms his experience by noticing the marks.
Yes. What I find interesting in the poem is the marking of the wings and the writing. You know that the marking of the wings is a sign of his experience, but writing it down is something else. It records the experience, but it also makes it part of history. So that the timely, the reference to time and I would like to think more about that. But anyway, right. Yes, I think what helps in the poem is that our own imagination, which which also makes it performative. I mean, we are starting imagining the scene, so that our own recreation is very agential, along with what the poem does. Okay, then I come to the ecstasy of St. Teresa. How much time do I have left?
About 17 minutes.
Oh, okay. Now there's this video where the whole work is described, and it's about St. Teresa who had this interaction with an angel. And so let me just play the... Okay, how am I going to do that? Because I have to be connected to the internet. Okay, I don't really think it's so necessary. The video just describes what is also around her, all the figures around the sculpture group. And then here it is. And here is a description of what she experienced. Beside me on the left appeared an angel in bodily form. He was not tall but short. So we can actually see that Bernini has there a short angel. His face was so aflame that it appeared to be one of the highest rank of angels, who seemed to be all on fire. So I can't really see that. That the face is aflamed. Okay. In his hands I saw a golden spear, and at the iron tip there appeared to be a point of fire. This he plunged into my heart several times so that it penetrated to my entrails. When he pulled it out, I felt that he took them with it and left me utterly consumed by the great love of God. The pain was so severe that it made me utter several moans. The sweetness caused by this intense pain is so extreme that one cannot possibly wish it to cease, nor is one's soul content with anything but God. This is not a physical but a spiritual pain, though the body has some share in it, even a considerable share. Now, the value of reading works through each other is that you start looking at this in same connection with the Edge of Dideric's and in connection with the two sculptures. And I'm actually seeing the word pain, and I'm relating it to the pain of Jacob with his thigh, the injury on his thigh. The pain Dideric's had in making this work, this edge. I don't see pain in the struggle between Jacob and the angel of the other of these guys. I don't see pain there, but I do see a form of ecstasy. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, the ecstasy is so prominent. And it's a woman, which makes it more interesting. Because I don't think women's experiences were really taken seriously, or her spirituality was only recognized a few centuries after she was canonized by the church. Okay, and then there's this Bernini's ecstasy of St. Teresa across the line. And the thing is the focus not too much on her erotic experience or her physical experience. Okay, she was a nun. She lived in the 16th century Spain at the height of the Reformation. She wrote about her visions in several books, including the description of the scene Bernini depicted. I think this previous description of what she was so prominent that it was worth making a sculpture group of. It stood out. It was so telling and performative that it actually motivated Bernini to make something of it. Okay, right. So now let's there are so many questions we can ask. How is her angel different from Dietrich Anderson or not? I mean, the angel differs in their works also, but how is her angel different? For me, this angel is actually very teleurstellend. Because it looks like a little Cupido. And with a little arrow. I mean, she says he had a spear. And here it's like, well, it looks as if he's throwing a dart to me. And he looks like those Cupidos in the classical works. So why is this angel so? Well, that's her experience, but the depiction is much more subtle. There's no real merging of bodies. There's this distant angel standing at a distance, and the only contact with her is with the spear. There's no bodily contact. Is that not typical of a woman's spirituality or experience of spirituality? That it's less physical, but it is definitely physical here. Her experience was very physical. But the depiction is, well, if you actually, they say that her clothes are very heavy, and if you look at the toes, it's curling. That's what the video says, in ecstasy. It's a pity I can't show the video, but I just have to change something here on to get the internet to work. Okay. So we have, I think in diffraction you can look at differences, you can look at similarities, but diffraction is actually going a bit further. And it is, if we look at critical posthumanism, it is querying tradition and querying familiar narratives. Do the poem and the sculpture subvert the biblical narrative, the patriarchal Judeo-Christian tradition? Or do they comply with it? Do the Jacob and the angel, the sculptures? What does the Teresa sculpture say about female spirituality and physicality? Why are angels always masculine? As I know that the muses in classical times were females, there were 9. And the inspiration wasn't, well, I'm not sure, but I don't think they were entangled with other figures. It was much more a distant type of inspiration. Perhaps that is what Bernini took from that. I'm not sure, I'm not an art historian. But it puzzles me that angels are always masculine.
Maybe it's the connection with war in the beginning, with armies, angel armies and stuff, and that wouldn't be a woman's place or to fight or something like that.
But we have Amazons.
Yeah, exactly. But it's also interesting to note that in movies or I don't know how early, but there's a big shift in the depiction of masculine angels to either more there's no sex implied, or for example, I think in the Constantine movie, Gabriel is played by Tilda Swinton, so it's very the word I'm looking for is not, I've got non-binary in my head, but yes.
Androgynous.
I think we must also remember that the Catholic Church and the Church of the Middle Ages was very influenced by like Aristotelian notions of society, and if you look at Aristotle, he definitely devalued women, their place, their rationality. Yes. He denied them rationality, and even if you look at the comparison, Saint Teresa is incredibly passive. This is being done to her, where Jacob is part of a battle. He's an agent. He's active in the scene, and that's maybe what's interesting about the Diedrich's piece. Is it Diedrich's? Yeah, the Diedrich's piece, because I'm assuming, maybe, I don't know if it's a self-portrait, but at least the figure on the ground is also a bit more passive, where maybe with the other ones there's a lot more like both of them seem equally into it, kind of thing. Where with the first one and Saint Teresa, there's maybe passivity.
Yeah, you can see that in her face is the expression is swooning.
Yeah. I feel like she lacks agency, and even the way she describes it, it's done to her. It's filled her.
Yeah.
There's very little of what she
Of her own agency.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So I think that's also quite interesting.
The body in the Diedrich's work, I presume, was dead. But even if the body was dead, the matter still has agency, because matter never ceases to become. So, but that was my thought on that.
What's interesting to me is actually I would say opposite interpretation, but the fact that it focuses on the ecstasy in her face. It made me think of how rarely in, let's say, films when that the focus is on female sexual pleasure.
Yes.
And as soon as it is focused on female agency in sex, the MBBA rating goes through the sky, through the roof. It's always focused on the man, and I think that's why. I can't remember my point, but
I actually differ with you on that point. I don't know if maybe we're speaking about the same thing, but I always find in movies when the age restriction comes on, it's higher. It's when they show male nudity. And
I'm not talking about nudity. I'm talking about enjoyment. Like you very often see women giving man oral sex, but you won't see that the reverse somewhere, and then the rating is very high, and you always see men masturbating in movies. You never see women masturbating in movies because women don't masturbate.
Yes.
And so anyway, so
but
that's
the opposite is also true as soon as it's two men. And even just a kiss, and then it's like a 21 rating.
But the thing is also because when it's two women, a lot of time it's to satisfy the heterosexual male gaze, and also that's also why you don't see male nudity. It's because the nudity on screen is not for female enjoyment, the viewer. It's for male enjoyment. That's why we all see.
Oh, we should have lived in the Renaissance. We missed our time.
So that's what I wanted to. When you were talking about the little angel, that it's less threatening than if it was like this hulking masculine thing.
But even if there was a hulking masculine angel, I wonder if the sexual tension wouldn't have been increased. So now it's kind of like a boy child and a grown woman, where if it had been one of those other angels, immediately it becomes a sexual scene, which perhaps he was trying to avoid. Well, in my mind, I think that would have a lot more sexual undercurrents. If it was like a big man.
I don't think two men can get away with it more easily.
Yeah, it's in the two
men.
It's actually very subtle.
Yeah.
But just one last thing, don't you also think that with the child figure, it completely takes away from the eroticism, actually, because the implication is the woman enjoys or should have enjoyment through her children or something like that, but not a physical act of sex.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's safer.
Yeah, definitely.
So we should go into Saint Teresa's story. I'm not sure about how she, what her life story is. Mostly they come from life of poverty, and then they become, convert and then become nuns. So I'm not sure what is her story. Okay, so this brings me to the end of my presentation. And I would love to talk to you a bit more and also have well, might use you in research, but I get through the ethical clearance before I do that. Okay, thank you so much for your participation. It really enlightened me.
Thank you.